think this is the untold story of our climate crisis is our agricultural system here in the United States is well, they call it the process of turning oil into food, and it makes a lot of sense. Our whole agricultural system is based off globalization, and globalization is based off the idea that we're going to have cheap and plentiful fossil fuels to continue to truck food all across the world, which is just not the case anymore. Globalization, the high cost of fuel, is reversing the trend of globalization. And another thing that we've intricately linked a lot of our food here in the United States, because we grow so much corn, and corn's a horrible crop, especially this GMO corn that we grow. Regular corn in the Americas didn't grow very much higher than someone's head, and this corn we grow now is just huge. And it's it produces a lot of food. We feed a lot of people.
Well,
but the problem is
but we're feeding. I think it's upwards of, in the vast majority, potentially. I think it may be 90% of the corn and soybeans we grow we feed to animals in factory farms.
Well, that is part of the issue. And let me get around to that. Is that corn is a high intensity crop. It takes a lot of inputs to grow a bushel of corn, and a lot of water, and a lot of nitrogen fertilizer. Nitrogen fertilizer is a byproduct of petroleum, and about half of all the nitrogen fertilizer that we use here in the United States can't actually use all the nitrogen. Most of it goes to eutrophication in our streams here in America.
Well, yeah, but I think several mile dead zone around the Gulf of Mississippi.
But what is the big waste? Two things, because of corn is a big waste. All the corn that we waste on feeding the animals, and then all the corn that we waste on biofuels. And I'll come back to biofuels. But the corn that we waste on animals is absolutely outrageous. And here's the thing: most of it goes to cows.
Yeah.
And cows don't even eat grain. Cows eat grass.
They're supposed to.
They don't eat grain. Well, I mean, they waste
most
of it.
I've heard it takes 16 pounds of grain to make a pound of beef.
Well, it depends on where you're looking at your statistics.
Right, I've heard 13.
But it goes between, now the most conservative estimate would be 7 pounds. But taking that we don't use all the cow, most of the cow we can't even eat. So we're saying about 20 pounds of grain per pound of beef that's produced, and
if you count the bones.
Yeah, and that is just absolutely amazing. Then you look at 7.5 pounds of grain for a pound of pork, and 3.5 pounds of grain for chicken.
One thing people could do at home though is to eat chicken, or not eat meat, but eat chicken.
Horribly inefficient. Well, we
beef.
eat way too much. We way too much meat here in the United States, and it's all tied into our farm bill. We subsidize food that's bad for us, and we have not been subsidizing food that's good for us. So this is a health crisis. This is an environmental crisis.
It ties into the healthcare issue. You know, we talk about the cost of healthcare. We could bring the cost of healthcare down if people were eating better.
Very much so. And the thing is that we're going to have to produce more of our own food. And during World War II, all the victory gardens that we had during World War II, and before that even, because people were growing their own food, we were producing, Americans by themselves were producing as much, in their homes, producing as much food and vegetables as all the vegetable farms in America were. And so we were feeding ourselves at that time. And now we've went to this centralized system of agriculture.
It's unsustainable.
It's completely unsustainable.
There's actually a quote I was wanting. Well, no, I actually didn't bring it, but go ahead.
The estimate is, and this is, I think agriculture should be thrown in as a green job. The estimate is we're going to need 100 million new farmers if we're going to be able to meet the demand that our food crisis is going to place on us. And we're going to need new cooks. We're going to need people who are well-versed in issues concerning our agricultural system, our environment, being able to actually grow food and still produce the food that we need for our population.
I mean, we use massive amounts of fossil fuels to, to water and cultivate the fields and harvest the fields, and then we're using massive amounts of petrochemicals to spray herbicides and petrochemicals to make the fertilizer. And I mean, we're gonna run out of oil eventually, so we have to make a transition.
This is the problem with biofuels here. Cellulosic corn-based ethanol will not solve our energy demand for oil. Now, and here's just an astonishing fact here. And Congress put a mandate by so many years that we were going to get 10% of our fuel from cellulosic corn ethanol. We took all the arable land in the United States that's used for row crop agriculture and turned it over to corn production. We wouldn't even produce 1% of the energy we use in petroleum. And you're talking about cellulosic corn ethanol takes 6 barrels of oil to produce 1 unit. It takes 6 units of energy to produce 1 unit of energy. It's
really inefficient.
Very inefficient. And where an oil to actually extract the oil from the ground, and I'm not saying that I like to use petroleum, but I'm saying that you're only using 1 unit of energy to actually create 6, so it's the other way around. But even more important is what we're doing with the corn ethanol, is that we're destroying our environment, and it needs to stop.
Isn't it, also part of government to blame for that, because they're subsidizing this industry of corn ethanol energy production for, it's taking 10% of our, in our gasoline. I don't know.
There's another interesting statistic I was wanting to bring up. Actually, a UN report said that actually 18%, or about a fifth of our greenhouse gas emissions are coming from this unsustainable meat production. It not only includes the factory farming of animals, but also tropical deforestation. We're cutting our rainforest down to graze cattle or to grow corn or soybeans to feed the cattle. So actually beef is arguably, beef production, the way we're doing it through rainforest and factory farming beef is one of the biggest causes of global warming emissions. So, I mean, everybody talks about having a more efficient car, a more efficient house, but not as many people are talking about what we're eating, and maybe we should eat less beef, or maybe we should change the way that we're growing our beef.
And all the methane emissions.
Methane as well, right. That may be included in the 18% of the greenhouse gas emissions.
And eating locally as well.
Yeah, eating local,
farmers markets
free range.
That Fayetteville supports
Fayetteville's
so much.
doing a good job on that. And it's also, so it's 18% of the greenhouse gas emissions from animal agriculture, but actually that's more than our transportation sector, which is 13%. So we actually are producing more greenhouse gas emissions from our meat, the way we're producing meat, over our automobile emissions. So that's just unbelievable.
A lot of people don't realize the biggest contributor to global warming is not automobiles and it's not industry, it's buildings.
Buildings, yeah.
Buildings are the biggest contributor to global warming, and that includes the electricity that's used to power the buildings, obviously. But it also accounts for the process and the construction process. And the good thing about the American Clean Energy and Security Act that me and Ryan are talking about, this doubles the mandates for energy building codes by 2014, and then it ramps it all the way up to 80% by 2030. So that means in 2030 you have to build a building, you're mandated to build a building, new construction, 80% more energy efficient. So that right there, it takes a serious step towards reducing global warming.